History of white privilege in this country, how they've run absolutely everything, and it is everything. And this is the fall of that system. Like, it's gonna get ugly. It's gonna get ugly before it ever gets pretty, but it'll burn down to the ground before we ever continue to live in this shit.
The way empires rise is also the way they fall. America rose by colonial settler violence and expansion, and Israel is just a microcosm of that. They rose by belligerence and brutality and genocide, and this is exactly what's bringing them down now. Yes, it is violent. Yes, it is savage. Yes, it is criminal and horrific, and it's incredibly painful. But it's like water draining out from a pool. It moves faster and more violently at the bottom of the vortex until it disappears. What we're seeing now, in my opinion, is the dying spiral of American empire, and Israel is the drain that it's going down.
So it's clear that we are watching the fall of the American empire in real time. And there is a stark difference in the way that the white community is responding and how the black community is responding.
Every economic problem that we're facing in this country right now, student loan debt being just out of control, the government shutdown, SNAP benefits being cut, health insurance premiums about to go through the roof, your rent going up, your pay stagnating, groceries just being astronomical, is because reparations were never paid after the Civil War.
Have you been paying attention to the high rate of unemployment for black workers?
It is traditionally higher than for all workers.
Well, listen, it's through the roof right now. There's hundreds of thousands of black workers that have been pushed out of the workforce, and the unemployment rates for black workers and all workers are among the highest they've been since the COVID-19 pandemic. Black workers contribute over $1 trillion to the U.S. economy, but the push out of these workers from the workforce has led to a loss of $37 billion in the GDP, with black women being among, just so y'all know, the most educated and most active in seeking work. Their push out is a glaring warning sign for where our economy is headed, because black workers, black women in particular, have always been the canaries in the coal mine. So this is a problem for everyone. Black women are bearing the brunt, but everyone will feel this hurt. I have led letters to Fed Chair Powell calling for action to be taken. He is also a member of FSOC. So I want to ask you, Mr. Secretary, will you commit to analyzing black unemployment rates specifically and its impacts on financial stability? Yes or no?
I will analyze black unemployment rates.
Wonderful. And when will you get us a report and a plan of action? I was thinking March 6th.
I can't commit to a date.
Okay, all right. Well, I think March 6th makes sense. That'd give you over a month, which is more than enough time to convene that working group and to report out your findings. I know you already have the infrastructure to do that. So at the end of the day, black families, black futures, and the lives and livelihoods of all who call this country home are depending on you to act. And with that, happy Black History Month.
Every economic problem that we're facing in this country right now, student loan debt being just out of control, the government shutdown, SNAP benefits being cut, health insurance premiums about to go through the roof, your rent going up, your pay stagnating, groceries just being astronomical, is because reparations were never paid after the Civil War. Let me explain. After the Civil War, the Union, the North won and the South was defeated, but the South was never punished. The Confederacy lived on in the ideology of the people, of the white people of the South. Reparations were never paid to Black Americans. They were never really, truly given the opportunity to pick themselves up by their bootstraps, to rise up and become equal members of this country, equal citizens. They've been fighting for their equality since then. They've never actually truly achieved it. So when white people hear a promise from Donald Trump et al. That we're gonna run the country like a business, to them that sounds appealing. They're like, oh yeah, because you know what? I'm a business owner. I own this country because I'm white. When black and brown people hear, well, we're gonna run the country, run the government like a business, they understand what that means because they've been dealing with it for centuries. White people think that they are on the side of the owners, the masters, but they're not. Most white people have more in common with the black and brown people that they look down upon. They are closer to them in the economic tax bracket than they are to the white billionaires whose asses they kiss. But listen to them glazing billionaires, especially on this app. I make $50,000 a year, but I have more in common with Jeff Bezos than I do with George Floyd. Bullshit! The only reason the lie of let's run this country like a business appealed to you is because you thought you would benefit. And now here you are. Now here you are understanding that when they say we're going to run this country like a business, that means they're going to profit off of your ass. That means that if you take $100,000 loan out to go to college, you will be in debt to the federal government until the day you fucking die. You borrowed 100 grand, prepare to repay 300 grand. Because they're running the government like a business now. And guess what? You're a customer, not an owner. The government exists to serve us, not to profit off of us. And we will continue to have these problems until y'all get your fucking minds right.
So it's clear that we are watching the fall of the American empire in real time. And there is a stark difference in the way that the white community is responding and how the black community is responding. The black community en masse has completely withdrawn. They fought, they campaigned, they warned us, and we chose the orange man anyway. And they're out. The white community, on the other hand, is fighting. Those of us who aren't under Trump's spell. And there is this real sentiment that if we can just get Trump out of the way, then we can all get back to normal. But the thing is, that's not what God is doing. And I'm not a nihilist, but we're missing the point. The point is this white supremacist system has wreaked enough havoc. Enough. And God is judging it. And the fact that we are clinging so hard to it makes me wonder, what does the black community see that we don't, that's allowing them to totally let go right now?
Unfortunately, I think a lot of people think the world that we experienced before COVID is somehow going to come back, and that world is long gone. While it has not been fully established, the American people, we are in a recession. There's no way I just saw someone pay $95 for gas. Like, that's literally a bill. And I hate to say it, until we, the people, start cutting out expenses and making these corporations feel it, nothing's going to change. Like, I think it's been made very clear, these people do not care about our well-being as humans. And it's up to us to kind of put our foot down to make that happen.
What we are experiencing now is the extinction burst of American empire, because the caged animal is going to escalate and they're going to try to desperately cling to resources. So that's why you see these fascist movements, they all function the same way, because they're trying to desperately cling to resources as there's a crisis in imperial capitalism. My overall view of the historical situation is that we're witnessing the death of the last white supremacist empire. Portuguese in the 15th century, Spanish into the early 16th, the Dutch, the French, the British, and then after World War II, the US empire. And so we have to expect that there's going to be a lot of noise and a lot of disruption and a resurgence in fascism. We're going back to the bloody roots of settler colonialism, and we're seeing all of that unfolding. If you double down on extractive violence and forever war, the way we're doing now in Iran, it's only going to hasten the decline of the empire. Richard Wolff, great Marxist economic historian, shows systematically that all of those empires that I just named, they accelerate their downfall because when their currency is sold off as the world's reserve currency, they try to make up their gains with new military adventurism abroad, and it just hastens the collapse.
That's what's happening.
That's what's happening. Objectively and obviously, that's what's happening. And what that means is that we should really be focused on what we are going to build on the ashes of this dying empire. empire. And I think that what we build on it is something that is not rooted in extractive imperial capitalism. I think that it's something that is rooted in care instead of cages. I think that it's rooted in environmental sustainability instead of extraction. I think that we have a chance to green the globe, quite literally, right? Not just politically, but environmentally. That kind of transformation is the only hope that we have. And if it comes from the American imperial core, that changes the trajectory of history. And my bet is that Californians are progressive enough to want to start that vision here.
Y'all want to know one real reason why America's crashing out like crazy right now? Mediocrity don't hit like it used to, baby. See, once upon a time in America, you could be real mid and still thrive. Mediocre effort, boom, you get a house, car, annual vacation, pension, hell, maybe even a boat. You could clock in, coast through the week, grill on Sundays, and still retire with dignity. But that era is dead and gone, baby. And instead of leveling up or adapting, they're mad, they're bitter, and they're not even blaming the billionaires. They blaming you. They have the audacity to blame me. They blaming immigrants, black people, queer folk, anyone they think is taking something that used to be theirs by default. See, they don't want equality. They want comfort. And when mediocrity no longer gets them that comfort, they start rewriting the rules to rig the game again. It ain't about fairness. It's about preserving the lie. The lie that being average should still be enough for them.
You know, for as bad as the world seems right now, the United States, how out of control it is, how little power it seems that we have, the little bit of constitutional rights that we have are being violated, and you know, pretty much just we're being pinned against the ground, backs against the wall. It is such a blessing. I was just listening to Deontay Kyle's fucking podcast, and he was talking about just like the history of white privilege in this country, how they've run absolutely everything, and it is everything. And this is the fall of that system. Like, it's gonna get ugly. It's gonna get ugly before it ever gets pretty, but it'll burn down to the ground before we ever continue to live in this shit. And I know that because there is enough brown folk, melanated folk, native peoples of the world in this country to overtake that white supremacy. They're fighting. This is the last straw. They're trying to keep this control, but that's too far gone. This is the natural karma of the world, and I know it feels shitty. Trust me, I have a 3-year-old and I have a child on the way, and it's scary to think they're gonna have to grow up in this shit and the violence that comes behind this. But I also know that this is the last time that this battle is going to have to be fought, because there's a new world coming. They controlled everything. The world is crashing for a new world to be born, built, and lived in. And I know that shit to be true. Even if we don't get to actually live in it, I believe that this is a process of a new world truly being built where people could live heaven on earth. They don't gotta go through this bullshit. White supremacy, whiteness, white control of the world is going down. And it's not just in the United States. It's in the whole world. This is nature. This is just laws coming into play. So I'm thankful. I'm thankful for all the pieces of shit who are helping crash the system right now.
The Republicans know they cannot win the midterms if they've already damaged the very working class that they depend on for those votes. And that is how you know that they know exactly what they're doing, that they are intentionally harming their own voters, but delaying it until after they've gotten their vote first. Delaying it until it's too late for them to do anything about it. They're getting the working class to vote against their own interests. When the American empire finally collapses, historians will not be shocked by the greed of the elite. They're going to be appalled by the loyalty of the poor. Working class didn't just vote against their own interest. They worshiped the very billionaires that were exploiting them. They slashed their own benefits. They gutted their own health care. They took food away from their children. And they didn't do it because it would help them. They did it because they were told it would hurt someone else. And that's exactly what we're seeing as we attack an entire group of human.
America's downfall won't be caused by foreign enemies, economic collapse, or lack of innovation. It will be destroyed by the very things it was built on: racism, greed, power, and the exploitation of the marginalized. So let's start with racism. America's had a centuries-long addiction to white supremacy, from slavery to Jim Crow to mass incarceration to modern-day suppression. The system wasn't just built on racism, it still depends on it. And you can't build trust and unity and long-term prosperity when the foundation is hatred and division. Now let's talk about the power, because America doesn't just chase power, it hoards it. At the very top, power is concentrated in the hands of a few, bought and sold through billion-dollar lobbying firms and dark money, and the people at the bottom, well, they're distracted and divided and disposable. But power with no accountability always turns inward. It eventually devours its own. Then there's greed. America's true religion. Every institution, healthcare, housing, education, even justice is for sale. The rich don't pay taxes, corporations exploit workers, billionaires fly to space while families can't afford insulin. And no emperor has ever survived when it values profit more than people. And finally, exploitation. This country built its wealth off the backs of stolen people on stolen land. And to this day, it thrives off keeping Black, brown, indigenous, immigrant, and poor communities in struggle. It's modern day plantation capitalism, wrapped in flags and hashtags. But here's the warning. You can only ignore the cries of the oppressed for so long before the system breaks. While America continues to argue about whether racism is real, the rest of the world is moving forward, investing in education, universal healthcare, green energy, and collective progress. They're building bridges, America's burning them. And yes, if this country doesn't confront its demons, it will collapse from the inside out. Not because of the lack of greatness, but because of its refusal to share that greatness with everyone. The future won't be stolen by guns or war. It will be lost in boardrooms, courtrooms, and classrooms where equity is denied and truth is buried. And when America falls, it won't be a tragedy. It'll be a consequence.
There is a term in behavioral psychology called extinction burst. It is basically when a maladaptive behavior is being conditioned out. And so the person doubles down on the maladaptive behavior because somewhere in the subconscious, they know that it's dying. And so things get worse before they get better. And so if we apply that to the empire and what we are witnessing, for example, the presidential debate and the draconian laws that are being passed, this is empire's grip on its extinction, basically. US hegemony and empire is falling. It's inevitable. It has been researched and studied by historians that every empire falls every 250 years. That is the exact Pluto cycle that the United States is in, which is 250 years. In 2026, the US will be 250 years old. And if you've been paying attention, all of these laws that they're passing basically to censor and control us should not be a shock to you. This has been imagined, intended, and designed by the original settlers of the US. What I'm saying is things are going to get a lot worse before they get better, not in a way of fear-mongering, but if we understand that a hurricane is coming, then we know that we need to prepare for it, which is why individually and collectively we all feel this sense of urgency that we need to figure out, first of all, who we are. We have to know ourselves if we are going to know our purpose. And then we have to start doing our role in collective liberation. So we need to ask ourselves, if we know that essentially this is the beginning of the end of empire, what are we all co-creating when it falls? And we really need to start working with each other because they will not save us. We will save us.
When the American empire finally collapses, historians won't be stunned by the greed of the elite. They will be stunned by the loyalty of the poor. That stopped me in my tracks. The working class didn't just vote against their own interests, they worshipped the billionaires robbing them. They slashed their own benefits, gutted their own healthcare, and cheered while the rich wrote off private jets as tax deductions. Not because it helped them, but because they were told it would hurt someone else. And that right there is how you rig a democracy without ever breaking a single law.
Some laws were broken.
But this tweet makes such an important point. The greed of the elite is expected. What is not expected is the loyalty of the poor, of the working class, to those who are taking from them. That is what is going to.
Y'all, I really think we are witnessing the decline of the American empire in real time. I've been thinking that anyway, just because of how poorly things are going domestically. But seeing what's happening with Iran is really driving the point home for me that, yeah, I think the whole world order is shifting. And let's just say the year of the fire horse is off to a fiery start, baby. As an anti-imperialist and geopolitics enjoyer, it has been very honestly satisfying to see how Americans are reacting to this on social media in real time. Like, Americans are realizing that having a giant fucking bloated ass military budget does not mean that your military is actually good at accomplishing shit and that your military is effective. And it's kind of wild that Americans need this reminder because, like, let's be real, we've been getting our fucking shit rocked militarily in all of these stupid wars of aggression that we've started since World War II. World War II is the last war that the US military won. And like, let's be real, the Soviets did all of the fucking heavy lifting on that. And then we just kind of came in at the end and took credit. And then we won in Japan by dropping 2 nukes. Like, that's not, we didn't win via military engagement. Like, 3 F-15 fighter jets got taken down in the same day, and y'all want me to believe that that was friendly fire from Kuwait? Girl, please be so serious right now. Like, Iran took down 3 of our fucking fighter jets. And as a China appreciator, watching Americans realize that, like, we really could not do shit against the Chinese military is, like, unbelievably satisfying. People are like, oh my God, like, if Iran is rocking our shit this hard, like, what the fuck would we do against China? And the answer is not shit, dude. Not a goddamn thing. And I hope to God that even Trump is not stupid enough to think otherwise. But, like, here's the thing about China. Nobody needs to fear their military unless you fuck with them. They don't do wars of aggression, okay? That's not in their plan. They're trade maxing. They're economy maxing. They have a very strict plan. They're running a strict fucking program over there in terms of their economic plans. And going to fucking war is going to fuck up their plans. And, like, maybe all these other fucking stupid countries, the US, should take notes that when you don't fucking invest in war and instead you invest in your fucking people, you become a fucking economic powerhouse. And by the way, they're a military powerhouse too. But again, that military, that is there to defend themselves. And, they don't say this, but, like, it's to defend themselves against the United States, and they can obviously do so very effectively. Some of the discourse I've seen floating around is like, well, what about Taiwan? Like, how would we defend Taiwan against a Chinese war of aggression? Like, girl, we wouldn't. We fucking wouldn't. We fuck with China, we're gonna get our fucking shit pushed in. The end. Period. But again, not something that we need to worry about because China is not launching any fucking wars of aggression, especially not on their own territory, which is what Taiwan is. They're not going to fucking do that. Like, they're not going to intervene militarily in other countries' conflicts, and they're definitely not going to, again, launch any type of aggressive military actions. But, like, you better fucking believe if you poke that fucking dragon, they will fuck your shit up. And I think most of the world knows this, and I hope fucking Trump knows this, and the Chinese definitely know it, and they're not the ones to go around, waving a big stick, as Theodore Roosevelt would say. They don't fucking need to. I think what they've done economically speaks for itself, and it's interesting because, people will say that the U.S. has the biggest military in the world, but that's actually debatable. The U.S. has the biggest military budget in the world. The U.S. has 1.3 million active duty troops, and China has 2 million. The U.S. has the superior air force, air power. China has the bigger navy. And again, the U.S. has the bigger budget, but we probably have a bigger construction budget too, and we see how that's working out. I actually don't know shit about construction budgets. I'm just talking shit. I'm just saying, like, just because the Chinese spend less money doesn't mean that their military is less effective. But again, yeah, this very stupid war launched by the empire, the US Israeli empire, is just proof that it is collapsing because, as we know historically, empires lash out as they die and collapse. And unfortunately, it is going to mean a lot of suffering for the world, and eventually back home here in the US, it's going to lead to a lot of suffering. But at this moment, it is sparking joy for me to see the US military showing its whole ass.
The U.S. empire is falling militarily for the same reason that the Roman Empire fell militarily. To TLDR Roman military history, basically they took over as much territory as they could by force. And admittedly they were pretty good at that, but they used the reputation of being good at that to win over new territories and new peoples into the Roman fold. Basically they said to anyone and everyone on their borders, hey, you are going to get taken over by us sooner or later, but if you cut a deal with us right now, you're going to get a better deal than if we have to come take you by force later. And a lot of people thought that was a pretty good deal because honestly, compared to the alternative, it kind of was. A lot of these lands and a lot of these peoples were able to maintain some amount of local autonomy so long as they paid taxes and sent men to go fight in the legions, which the Romans used to bolster their military and then go out further and make the same threat to more people. But as the empire got bigger, they had too many borders in too many places to be fighting on all fronts all the time. That is to say, even though the Roman Empire was the biggest, baddest kid on the block, in local regions, the balance of power could actually shift towards much, much smaller tribes and nations. Of course, Rome did what they could to garrison their border territories in order to defend against these possible attacks. But for arguably most of the empire's history, a relatively small tribe, if they devoted all of their time and attention, could easily raid their way into Roman territory, sack whole cities and regions, and haul off treasure back to their homes pretty easily. But they often didn't, and the reason why is because Rome would play their neighbors off of each other. They would select neighboring tribes and nations to get preferential treatment from them. They would be paid off, or they would receive protection, or they would be given grain. Meanwhile, they would pick other tribes to kind of arbitrarily be the enemy. And what this did was guarantee that these tribes would never join forces. If you were one of the preferred allied tribes, why would you go and attack your benefactors? Why would you risk your life taking what they're freely giving to you? And if you were one of their enemies, why would you attack a big giant empire with legions that could come descend down upon you when you could just attack your neighbor that has most of the riches you were trying to steal from the Romans anyway? And for a long time, that system worked pretty well. It allowed Rome to concentrate its forces into much smaller places in order to attack much bigger, stronger enemies. They were able to do that because they didn't have to constantly worry about raiders on their frontiers. But as you could probably guess, this system didn't last forever, because the system relies on keeping the tribes and nations divided. So if anything were to unite them under common cause, Rome would be under a real threat. Tribes that on a good day Rome could literally not even give a shit about could suddenly bring down the entire empire. And skimming over a lot of other factors, that is basically what happened. The tribes started joining forces for three major reasons. The first is other outside threats, like the Huns, who are moving into Germanic territory and forcing a lot of these tribes to work together in order to survive and then get pushed into Roman territory. Two, they wanted to get fat and rich, and who had all the food and gold? Rome. It had always been sitting over there. They've always wanted it, and once they coalesced, they realized they could just go get it. And three, some incredible mismanagement on the part of the Romans. Because remember, one of the most important ways to keep the tribes divided was to offer better terms to the ones who came willingly to you than the ones that you had to fight to subdue. But what did the Romans do over and over and over again? They started backstabbing these tribal leaders. They started killing them and slaughtering them and sneering at them. not doing anything to actually welcome and assimilate them into the empire, which is what they always used to do, which is what made them an empire in the first place. They turned possible allies into enemies. They turned possible citizens into insurgents. And they did all of that by just being fucking dicks to them. They gave all of their neighboring tribes and nations common cause to hate them and attack them at every turn. And once everyone started finding out that everyone else was also beating down on Rome, they got in on the action. It was a land grab. You have to get it while the getting's good. And right there is the process that the United States has started. The United States government has given a common enemy to Russia, China, Iran, Venezuela, Cuba, Colombia, Mexico, Greenland, Canada, Denmark, the UK, the EU, immigrants who could have been helpful contributors to our own society, our own citizens who are being needlessly attacked due to their skin color, their sexual preferences, their gender identity, their religion, what fucking have you. The United States military requires resources, manufacturing, assistance, and allies around the entire globe in order to function. And we, instead, have made enemies of the entire fucking globe. And now, Iran is stopping us in our fucking tracks for the entire world to see. How long do you think it'll be before all of these different forces who have been living under the thumb of the US empire for generations now start to realize, hey, if we all just start moving together, they're fucking cooked. Them coming to that realization is only a matter of time. And that is why the US military regime is about to fucking fall.
Here's something that a lot of Americans are going to have a hard time accepting and understanding. Donald Trump has destroyed America. America is over, at least as we remember and understand it. The United States as a country will continue to exist, but it'll be different. All of us have grown up in a world where America was the dominant global superpower. We were the leading light of democratic nations. Our president was the leader of the free world. Our currency was a global reserve currency. And this doesn't really come from any sort of formal designation. I mean, we're very rich and powerful, but it came from a general belief that we were the leading country. And that's gone now. It's been destroyed. It took Donald Trump less than 100 days to destroy it. The coalition of nations that formed around us because we were a powerful democracy and treat us as their leader, they're breaking away. Even Canada has broken away from us. Europe has broken away from us. We appear to be most friendly with dictatorships like Russia. They're small and weak and poor. It's ironic given how people treated Biden's presidency as unendurable, but I think we'll look back to it as the last moment that America was the America we grew up in. Nobody trusts us now. They look at us as unstable, as potentially corrupt, as unwilling to follow the rules that govern ourselves, much less everyone else. They look at us as dangerous. We could turn on them, impose tariffs. We could even attack them militarily, even our allies. We could try to annex their territories. No one has any reason to think of us as anything but a potential threat. America derived a lot of its authority from its reputation as the world's intellectual center, the center of all of the leading universities, the companies where people did research, where people changed the world. But Donald Trump is destroying those universities. He's destroying our medical research, our scientific research, our technical research. Those people are leaving the country. They're going somewhere else. And so the world's going to leave us behind. Why wouldn't they? We're a nation where our leader just yammers on and on about how America is going to bully everyone into line, but they don't want to work with us. They want to leave us to rot and look after themselves. As an American, it's incredibly depressing because it all happened for nothing. It's because Donald Trump is motivated by nothing but grievance and stupidity. No larger policy objectives was served. This is all about, I guess, punishing trans people and hurting immigrants for no reason other than to see them get hurt. And for that, we've destroyed a country that was a leader among nations in so many ways. We could have led the world, and we did for a long time, but Donald Trump has proven that we can't and we don't deserve to. And each and every one of us is going to pay the price for that eventually.